Jinhua Ancient and Modern Introduction. Come and read more of my works on the website of Yuan. Chapter 1. Wedge. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Blood setting sun, the end of the era, when the mountains fall, all things come to life. The sky is iron black mixed with the color of flames, and within the blood-red clouds, there is a shining sun, like a flowing golden ball wrapped in ancient lava. The brown earth begins to crack, flowing boiling purple water and bubbling bubbles. At some point, a purple air slowly rises into the sky, and the purple air becomes lighter and lighter, becoming gray and gloomy. And in the distance, a huge creature with a human head and a snake body lay on the ground as if nothing had happened, snoring loudly like a bell, long eyelashes that could be counted, trembling lightly with the rhythm of its breath. Even the barren land trembled with it, and the chaotic energy gathered and dispersed, merging and merging for a long time. Heaven and earth have not yet opened, chaos is tangible, purple chi rises, and life is just beginning to take shape. However, the distant sky was a strange flesh-red color, with many stone-green floating clouds winding and folding. In the void, the stars flickered, and at dawn, one could see the vast ancient land and a towering black mountain. When it's dark, I don't see my 5 fingers, only a blood moon hanging in the sky. I don't know how long it has been, but a black dot the size of a grain of rice suddenly floats in the chaotic void, getting bigger and bigger. When it reaches a certain degree, it shatters into a 100-zhang black hole, emitting billions of radiance from the middle, illuminating this ancient land. You can even see various types of creatures, including golden and iron horses, and dragon blood and dark yellow battle scenes from it. Shoo! 4 winged creatures rushed out of the black hole, their bodies stumbling and rushing towards 4 positions in the southeast, northwest, and northwest. The purple energy between heaven and earth dissipated in all the places they passed through. The last one was a turquoise-green creature about 5 feet tall, which appeared even more panicked. When leaving the black hole, it accidentally stumbled and didn't care what might trip it up. It limped north and fled, but when it first flew into mid-air, it only heard a bang sound and was accurately shot down by a golden meteor. Suddenly, it only heard a muffled groan, but this time it couldn't get up. At the same time, a drumming heartbeat came from the void. Dong dong. Dong dong. Slowly, the sound grew louder and louder, accompanied by the sound of Sanskrit, as if someone was singing, and suddenly praying with a pleading tone, as if breaking some taboo and mixed with a hint of sadness, sounding very pitiful. Boom! The other 3 huge figures fell like meteors, each drawing a beautiful and brilliant arc in the air, falling heavily to the ground, deafening and shocking, rolling up thousands of feet of dust. The era that belongs to you is over. The mountain shook off the rocks on its body and slowly stood up. What kind of huge creature is that? The left eye is a gilded golden sun, and the right eye is a blood-red crescent moon. Holding an axe flowing with magma, he points towards the void. Who are you? The voice was ethereal and profound, like a thunderbolt that shook the world, carrying an indescribable numbness. Who are you? What are you doing here? The big mountain shook off the black rock and gradually formed the outline of his face. In the universe, the supreme god of all planes, Ansel, I come to cleanse the traitors. It appeared, with 2 golden wings growing behind it, not angry but majestic. Its golden pupils were filled with coldness that disregarded life, and terrifying golden waves swept through it like wildfire, shattering chaos. The golden light illuminated the ancient and primitive land. But I didn't notice that there was also a plane in the gap here, and you hit it very deep, it said. This is a special realm that does not conform to its rules. The era that belongs to you is over, the Shan replied with the same sentence. At the moment of eye contact, the creature with golden wings trembled in its heart. Then, its fingers lightly flicked, and a golden light condensed on its fingertips, covering it towards the creature with a huge snake tail. Its body gradually weakened and then disappeared. Perhaps. The sound in the shattered void carried a wave of anger and disappointment, terrifying and eerie, profound and ethereal, and then the black hole began to heal, as if it had never appeared from the beginning. Who? E suddenly woke up. It's like a nightmare, long, endless. E rubbed her own eyes, exhaled a mouthful of turbid air, and the stirring wind filled the chaos with warmth. The void began to merge, and the earth no longer cracked. Then, small grass, flowers, and many lives appeared, giving the world some color. Sigh, I've never been so bored before. E thought and suddenly stood up, lifting his very full and energetic arm and extending it towards the sky. The sky suddenly lost its color and turned strange flesh red again. Ito had a huge tail and was a bit angry because when he opened his eyes, he only saw that the distance between heaven and earth was very close, several hundred meters, and there was a height. If he jumped a little, he would have to break through the sky because he was also a tall man. In this gray-red world, I would fall before taking a few steps. The ground was uneven, and I complained. As I thought about it, the ground healed, as if calming my little emotions. Just quickly saw a towering mountain in the distance, and Yiding looked at it. It turned out to be a huge creature much larger than Yiding. Yiding felt close, and the eye contact made Yiding no longer lonely. Little did they know that the next second, the mountain suddenly became blurry, the clouds were lifted, the ground was smoothed out, and turned into a huge black mountain with facial features. Deshan said, "For thousands of years, I have been sitting in the sky, and for thousands of years, I have been the mother of the earth. I say, Pangu." E said, "Chaos gives birth to Pangu, and all things think they are long. Hongmeng is trapped in it, and when you are born, you will be amazed. It seems that you and I are different." Deshan said, "There is no distinction between yin and yang in this world. This creature is male and female, and it goes through cycles and twists and turns. Finally, you have appeared, and it is another cycle." Sigh. E said, "My name is Nuwa, and I was born with a name. I don't know why." Deshan said, "Why is the spirit of all spirits, the first symbol of heaven and earth? The distinction between men and women begins with spirituality. The world opened to me at the beginning, and all things were nurtured by you. After soaring into the sky, the dust was 100 zhang high, and the clouds and mist were cleared away. The earth was newly formed, and the gray-red world had other 12 colors." Deshan said, "I am an incompetent creator. Chaos has just opened up, and heaven and earth have been revealed. All things nourish me, but I have no time to enjoy it." Then he let out a sigh, his clear energy rising and his turbid energy falling. He immediately stretched out his body, causing the sky to gradually rise and the earth to fall. Then, it turned into nothingness and chaos, as if carrying an irreconcilable resentment that had existed for a long time. After completing everything, he left nothing behind. "At least I still remember you, a mountain like Pangu, or a mountain like Pangu," E murmured to herself. "The two ceremonies have not yet been separated, and I have closed my eyes in the mist. It has not yet taken shape, and the heaven and earth, the sun and moon, have not yet formed. It is chaotic and dark yellow, and there is already the location of Pangu. The essence of heaven and earth roams within it." He remembered the appearance of the mountain and reached out to pick up the soft mud with water. He carefully kneaded it a few more times, and there was a small thing similar to himself in both hands. "Wow! Hee. The little thing babbled. It was a little Pangu with a pink face. "Although I thought it was made by myself, I also suspected that this little thing was originally in the soil, and couldn't help but feel surprised. But the joy and laughter of the little thing made me work hard, and I felt slow. So I anxiously reached out my hand, pulled it up, and pulled up a vine that had grown from the fallen mountain. It reached into the mud, waved it, and turned into thousands of light spots. The babbling sound became even closer. He glanced at the mountain, and its body began to dissolve. Suddenly, there were many things in the world. He blinked and looked around, and the sound of babbling Babbling came from all directions, but he clearly couldn't feel their emotions. Perhaps there will be some creatures like E creating life. I think. Chapter 2. Shizu. You are listening at novelfull.audio. This second-level spiritual herb is good, the little beggar will like it, buy it. The young man hummed a little tune, his handsome and gentle face always carrying a hint of unrestrained laughter, full of words and laughter, as if he didn't know what sorrow was. He just spoke lightly and naturally picked up a fragrant purple clover. A woman behind him waved her big hand, and the full amount of spiritual jade landed steadily on the stone table in front of the vendor, without even a sound, indicating her perfect control over spiritual power. Thank you, Mississippi. Grandma spoke very respectfully and quietly looked at the miss from Lingcheng. The woman was dressed in plain white attire, with a black belt attached to her waist and a red 3-foot-long sword on her back. Her black hair was as black as paint, and her figure was tall and slender. She had a refreshing and unadorned pretty face, exuding a sharp and cold temperament like a sword. The crown prince has such a good eye. Lingcheng grass is a treasure used to refine the two-color crystal narcissus Lingcheng, but it's a bit expensive, worth 20.4 lingbai. The black-clad guard spoke with flattery on his face. There are 12 levels of spiritual objects in heaven and earth. Spiritual objects of 5th level or higher can be considered as heavenly materials and earthly treasures, but in places like Lingcheng, second-order spiritual objects are very extraordinary. Jian Nian was taken aback and scratched her head, saying, I don't know. I smell quite fragrant. I bought it to make sachets for the little beggar. The guard smiled awkwardly upon hearing this and then glanced at the expressionless young lady who only knew how to pay. Sigh, how old is the age of this medicine, Fulinguo, old man? Jian Nian exclaimed in surprise, her eyes brightening. Young master, the medicine has been used for 65 years, and both the old and the young are honest. When the old man saw the second-generation ancestor asking, he was immediately full of energy and showed a kind smile. His hunched body also straightened a bit. The young man was a little disappointed when he heard the words, and said, Alas, the fruit that has been reviving for more than 100 years is sweet, and it is delicious when it is made into bintangulu. Little beggars will not like it. This hairpin looks really nice. The young man quickly rushed to another vendor, accompanied by a black-clad guard. Not bad, before leaving, my little brother knew how to choose a gift for me, Jian Yingying thought to herself, with a slightly raised corner of her mouth and a beautiful curve. She has also given her younger brother earnest teachings over the past decade. Forget it, it's too expensive, not in line with the frugal housekeeping temperament of a little beggar. Jian Nian murmured softly. But at this moment, the young man clearly felt a murderous aura, and his heart thumped. When he looked up, he ran into his own sister with a black line on her face. The latter's smooth and jade-like forehead was twisted into the character Chuan, and he frowned and stared at himself with willow eyebrows. It was clearly the dog days, but it made him feel like he was falling into an ice cave. Little brother. I'm leaving tomorrow, can't you take care of my emotions? Jian Yingying scolded, crossed her waist, without any image to speak of. However, soon after, her face was full of frustration, and she grumbled discontentedly, and Xiangxi will come back in a while. There will be days when you get tired of her. The young man tilted his head, touched his chin, and glanced at the various things carried by the guard. He had gained a lot and was quite satisfied, so he grinned and said, Sister, you're looking for your mother, not getting married. Is it necessary to make it seem like there's a gap between yin and yang? Jian Yingying was furious at the words and was about to beat up the kid when she found out that he had pulled out a half-inch small sword from somewhere. It was exquisite and small, with carved patterns and the words, Pinyin, written on it. Unfortunately, it was made of wood, and she was afraid that it might accidentally break. Sister, why don't you go? Our mother is not reliable either. From now on, in the Jian family, I will be in charge of enjoying, while you will be in charge of deterring. Plus, being a free thug like a little beggar, wouldn't it be beautiful? Jian Nian said to her sister every day after donating the treasure, but she felt uncomfortable. Although his elder sister had always enjoyed bullying him since childhood, which made him doubt their blood relationship. That's why he called her elder sister. However, thinking that she was about to leave the Jian family and head to the unknown and dangerous forbidden area, he also felt reluctant for a moment. Alright, Dad said that a girl's tears are as valuable as a boy's knees. Don't make it look like I'm bullying you. It seems like I've been beaten up since I was young, right? The boy noticed his sister's emotions and comforted her again. Jian Yingying's eyes turned red. She brought her little brother to go shopping today, hoping to leave Lingcheng with some thoughts. Although the two siblings often end up getting beaten up in their daily fights, their loved ones are like blood, and the relationship between blood and water cannot be changed. There are too many uncertain risk factors in that place, and perhaps the distance between heaven and man is not certain, but they must go. Before she could remember anything, her mother went to a place called the Forbidden Zone. Her father said that the environment in that place was extremely harsh and dangerous, and the same was true. When they were young, the siblings were worried and tormented for their mother every day. This phenomenon changed when my younger brother was 5 years old. That day, my mother suddenly returned home and the whole family was happy. My mother said she was doing well, eating and drinking spicy food. She joked that my younger brother actually had a beautiful little girlfriend by his side, and made Xiangxi blush. She also scolded my father for being a useless fake marquis with weak abilities and a slick tone. I didn't know what kind of intoxicating soup I had given her back then and asked her to willingly marry my father. The lively and lovely mother, after pouring a lot of bitter water on the siblings, hurriedly left. From then on, the shadow in the younger brother's heart cleared away, and he became more relaxed and optimistic. The only thing that caused criticism from the elders of the Jian family was that he no longer practiced and happily became a second-generation ancestor, without realizing anything. However, it was also after my mother's brief return that she had always been committed to developing the Jian family into the strongest father in Yunzhou. Instead, she seemed to have changed her personality, feeling depressed and confused all day, only accompanied by fine wine. The key is that my younger brother's cultivation talent has always been higher than mine, even if it has been delayed for some years. He is still at the middle level in the low-level spiritual academy. Thinking of this, Jian Yingying felt a headache. She lightly lifted her vermilion lips and said sternly, "Little brother, don't you want a longer lifespan?" "I think so." Jian Nian looked up and paused, saying, "I know what you're talking about, and there's no need to practice. Immortal life is something that everyone doesn't want. However, the Kai Jing Hall of the Jian family has many Kai Jing that can enhance longevity. Although their grades are relatively high, they can still afford them for me." Jian Yingying was angry at the words, but she still had patience. Her jade finger lightly poked the little brother's forehead and said angrily, "Don't you want to beat those few in the Spirit Academy and scold you every day as someone who eats soft rice and cultivates waste?" Looking at the young man with a dejected face that seemed to have been greatly affected, Jian Yingying felt a sense of joy in her heart. No young man with strong blood can bear such an insult. Jian Nian scratched her ears and squeezed out a rather helpless expression, whispering, "Those people don't dare to curse in front of me either. They're all jealous of my family's big business. Think about it." My father occasionally boasted to himself after drinking with guests, saying that he was one of the famous opposite-sex marquises in ancient China. Although he couldn't understand why the Grand Marquis didn't live in the capital, he was still living in a corner of Lingcheng, living a life of drunkenness and dreams. However, it was true that my father was still the undisputed top power in Lingcheng. Jian Yingying's silver teeth were grinding inwardly, wishing to eat this stinky little boy raw. He took a deep breath and directly used his trump card, mocking him, "I've heard that Xiangxi is a first-class cultivation genius in the Spirit Academy, and she has outstanding appearance and temperament. Her pursuers can rank from Lingcheng to the capital. Which girl doesn't worship the strong and upright? And do you deserve her? Xingyan glanced at the silent black-clad guard again and smiled, am I right? Xiao Yu. The black-clad guard was taken aback for a moment, his face hesitant, and he immediately spoke up, that's not it, Crown Prince. That old lady and the old man who always sells you heavenly materials and earthly treasures at high prices. Although they may have kind eyebrows and good intentions, it's probably just pressure that can make you breathless. Girls also need a sense of security, and all of this comes from their own strength. Finally, Jian Yingying saw the younger brother's slightly gloomy face. Jian Nian took a deep breath at this moment, as if she had made some inspiring determination. The next second, she smiled brightly and said, but I have a good father and a good sister. Moreover, he doesn't like little beggars either. Yu reading www.yuyukeangshu.net has never bought her from a human trafficker since she was 5 years old. After she showed her talent for cultivation, she sent her to a spiritual academy for cultivation. Little Nizi is so proud that she always stands in front of her when she sees her sister who hates her hard and beats her to death, crying bitterly and saying, Sister Chang, don't hit the crown prince anymore, hit me, sob. No prospects. With a headache, Jian Nian withdrew from her thoughts and first lowered her head, then smiled at her sister. Sigh. Jian Yingying never sighed as much throughout her life as she did today, it's just that some things are not as simple as my younger brother thought. Let's go back. I prepared some gifts for that girl and gave them to her for me. It's really a shame that she was here, otherwise I wouldn't want to go, after all. She paused for a moment before continuing. I don't seem to care either. I continued to stroll with Xiao Yu, as if I had accompanied them myself. Sister, do you have my farewell gift? The young man suddenly asked. No. Do you want a fist? Jian Yingying's face turned black. The little brother stuck out his tongue, but didn't continue shopping. On the way home, he just suddenly picked up her hand. Sister, when will we meet? Jian Yingying suddenly froze, feeling the strength of her younger brother for the first time. Her heart was sour, and apart from the strength and warmth in her palm, there was a slight tremble, as if trying to conceal something. She did not pierce it. 2 years. She smiled and said these 2 words, but her younger brother stared at her as if abnormal. She suddenly realized that the annoying little guy had grown up and had become a bright and handsome young man. The little brother carefully studied his expression, slowly released his tightly clenched hand, and hummed a tune as he walked on his own, heartless and carefree. Chapter 3. The Situation in Lingcheng. You are listening at novelfull.audio. With the appearance of a man and a woman on the stage, the emotions of the young girls in the entire audience began to rise, cheering and cheering for the agile girls on the stage. This is a very delicate melon seed face, a perfect beauty embryo. The girl's eyes are like a clear stream of water, with curved willow eyebrows and a sweet appearance. Her jet black hair is casually draped over her shoulders like a waterfall, and even in battle, her hair does not appear too messy. Bathed in the sunlight, it looks like a pearl is haloing and a beautiful jade is glowing. Hey, that's the most beautiful girl in our low-level spiritual institution. If it's me who fought with her, I'm willing to be beaten too. Yin junior sister should have the cultivation of Hai Ling, with light steps like a butterfly in the air. Her cultivation speed is really fast. Zi, Chou, Yin, Mao, Chen, Si, Wu, Wei, Shen, Yu, Su, Hai, the 12 spiritual Chen. The journey of cultivation begins with the realization of spiritual power. At midnight, it is the time to bid farewell to the old and welcome the new, and the spiritual power in the air will be less impurities accumulated the previous day. The spiritual power will also become more abundant, strengthening the foundation of the human body and removing dirt from the body. Many impurities will appear on the surface of the skin, and this spiritual power will become weak after midnight. If you want to continue washing yourself, you need to extend the time for sensing spiritual power. The process of inducing spiritual power to be in a state of cultivation at all times is called the 12 spirit chens, which are further divided into 3 stages: quenching, spiritual use, and transformation. When spiritual beings can feel the existence of spiritual power every minute and every second, and turn it into their own use, the elixir field will begin to form spiritual seeds, also known as spiritual pills. Generally speaking, even for those who are useless cultivators, they are born with the cultivation of a child spirit. After recording the events, they begin to cultivate. At the age of 15 or 16, their cultivation is generally in the Chen spirit stage, which means they can constantly perceive the existence of spiritual power and practice it from the child hour to the Chen hour. Yin Xiangxi, at the age of 10, entered a lower-level spiritual academy with a cultivation level of Chen Ling. At 15, he already had the strength of Hai Ling. As the last realm of the 12 spiritual Chen, Hai Ling's strength has already met the graduation requirements of a lower-level spiritual academy. The cultivation resources and platforms of intermediate colleges are undoubtedly the holy land that many lower-level spiritual academy students aspire to. Yin Xiangxi is 17 years old this year, with a beautiful appearance and a cold and aloof personality. Even if he is close to breaking through the spiritual pill realm, it is just around the corner. Yin Xiangxi and Wu Lei have both reached the stage of physical transformation, able to store spiritual power in the dantian and transform it into swords, sticks, and swords. Combined with their martial arts skills, they have a strong fighting momentum. At this point, the battle between the two has entered a white-hot stage, and both sides are no longer constantly probing, and their moves have become much more fierce. The burly Wu Lei punched the girl who was 1 head shorter than him. The latter, with his delicate body soaring into the air, easily dodged, and his palm, shining with crystal purple light, slashed into the air. The palm wind howled, and the man felt like facing a formidable enemy. He felt the cold air of this palm, so he suddenly stepped on it, his body rising into the air, like a fierce tiger in the mountains and forests. A whip with a hissing sound swept towards the woman, containing astonishing strength. The girl did not take a step back, her delicate body swaying like a god, constantly resolving the opponent's aggressive and direct moves. She formed a single-hand seal, and her palm condensed into a purple light seal. The spiritual power around her was mobilized, and the light seal flew out. She stood in front of the man's heel and stood still, like a purple iron plate. Her soaring posture could not be maintained for a long time. The man's toes condensed sharp pale yellow tiger claws, shattering the light seal and stabilizing his figure. The movement of flowing clouds and water only occurred in one breath. "Sister Yin, I'm going to use my ultimate move." Wu Lei smiled kindly. Yin Xiangxi nodded to give the other party a chance to take action. She didn't like to lose face in crowded situations, even if her strength was enough to instantly kill Wu Lei. 3-Yang Sword. Wu Lei clenched his hands tightly, revealing a faint yellow spiritual power. He closed his hands and slowly opened them again. His 3-inch yellow sword burst out with a fierce attack. Yin Xiangxi quickly retreated, only casually smashing the originally pale yellow sword shadow after it had become illusory. With a light and agile step, his spiritual power turned into a purple pai lian and poured towards the opponent. At the same distance, but when he reached Wu Lei, pai lian remained solid. "I lost." Wu Lei sighed lightly and said, "Xiangxi junior sister, the low-level spirit academy is no longer suitable for you. Continuing to stay will only waste your cultivation talent. The intermediate spirit academy is not in Lingcheng, I won't go." After finishing speaking, Yin Xiangxi left the battle platform, ignoring the cheers of everyone and only wanted to end the monthly assessment and go home. He was lost in thought and didn't take a few steps when he bumped into someone. He looked up and wanted to say something, but showed a surprised expression, and then smiled brightly. The man has a slender figure, dressed in a blue shirt, with dark black pupils slightly purple in color. His sword-like eyebrows slant into a few strands of black hair at the corners of his temples, and his facial contours are impeccable. Ah, it's Brother Yuan. Yin Xiangxi smiled sweetly. Shangguan Yuan, the proud son of the Shangguan family, was promoted to the Dan realm at the age of 17. It is said that she has a great reputation in the Advanced Spirit Academy and has been well taken care of since childhood. She is the best person to treat her except for the Crown Prince. Xiangxi, why stay here for so long waiting for that stinky kid Jian Nian? You've already set foot in the spiritual pill realm, maybe he's still standing still. Shangguan Yuan said, with a gentle smile on his face. When it comes to the background of the Jian family, let alone in Lingcheng, even if it has a small reputation in the entire ancient country. However, the people of Lingcheng do not know the identity of Prince Jian Nian, let alone his anonymous marquis father. Otherwise, the other two major families in Lingcheng would not have planned to swallow the Jian family, and the destitute Jian family has a strong sense of being bullied by dogs. Few people know the origin of the Jian family, only a man named Jian Tianjiao. In 10 years, the Jian family has become a big family that is no less powerful than the Li and Wu families in Lingcheng. No matter how these two old sects suppress them, they have never seen Jian Tianjiao suffer from exhaustion. Upon hearing this, Yin Xiangxi raised her pink and tender lips and said with a hint of dissatisfaction, the Crown Prince has already broken through to the level of Si Ling this year. Shangguan Yuan did not refute it. I remember last spring when Jian Nian only achieved spiritual cultivation. It was almost summer, and she only improved by a small level in a year. However, Xiangxi's younger sister thought it was not a big deal. After all, at the same age of 15, everyone else had Shenling cultivation and could turn spiritual power into swords and sticks, making a qualitative leap in combat power. Jian Nian's past cultivation talent was far inferior to his Shangguan Yuan. It should be noted that Xiangxi had achieved Shenling cultivation at the age of 10, while Jian Nian had already achieved it at the age of 5. According to Uncle Jian, Jian Nian began to cultivate at the age of 4, broke through Shenling at the age of 5, and increased his cultivation by 5 in a year. This calming energy was not released from the Shangguan family, who had been friendly with the Jian family. Otherwise, if the Marquis of Huayin and the Marquis of Chongping in Kyoto knew about it, they might remember this foreign surname Marquis who had been forgotten by them for many years. That was not good news for the entire Jian family. Sister Ying will leave tomorrow. She asked me to take care of you and Jian Nian in the future, Shangguan Yuan pondered. Compared to the inexperienced Jian Nian, what he cares more about is this senior sister who is admired by thousands of people in the Advanced Spiritual Academy. Since entering the path of cultivation, he has been either beating people or on the road of beating people. Even if the older generation of strong members of the 4 major families in Kyoto offended Jian's daughter, it is still a matter of hitting them without fail. Jian, the daughter of the parents, has never suffered a defeat since practicing Taoism. After hearing this news, Yin Xiangxi breathed a sigh of relief, but was both happy and worried. She was just happy that the Crown Prince would not be beaten in the future, but then again, from being a roadside beggar to entering the Jian family, neither the Crown Prince nor the eldest sister underestimated her and treated her as their own sister. As soon as the elder sister leaves, the sanctions against the Li and Wu families will also increase, and the Jian family will be in a precarious situation. Yin Xiangxi showed a worried expression. Both the Jian family and the Wu family produce a type of color crystal that can quickly restore their spiritual power. The Jian family produces Narcissus spirit crystals, while the Wu family produces Juling crystals. In the past, the Jian family occupied more than half of the market in Lingcheng. However, the Wu family did not know where to find a two-color master to improve the efficacy of Juling crystals. Over the years, the Jian family can only reduce prices and barely occupy about 30% of the market. And with the addition of the Li family, the already precarious trend has become increasingly dangerous. The Li family mainly grows various spiritual materials and is the largest spiritual material supplier in Lingcheng. In recent years, they have successively acquired some large-scale retail medicinal fields. However, The Jian family has always relied on the various medicinal materials and demon beast elixirs provided by the Li family to maintain a long-term cooperative relationship. Originally, the two families had a good business relationship, but Li Yunfei, the youngest son of Li Qing, the head of the Li family, was not only crooked but also had a very broken mouth. He refused to pursue his elder sister and scolded her as a wild child without a mother. In the end, he was kicked and his cultivation was ruined. Even though he regained his confidence in cultivation later on, the relationship between the two families also turned against each other. Li Qing once came to the door to argue about this matter, but it happened that the head of the family was not there that day, and the elders of the Jian family turned a blind eye and ignored him, as if there was no such person. When the young lady who came back from the trip saw the head of the Li family's fierce demand, she directly beat him into a pig's head and asked the Li family to pay 100,000 spiritual treasures before agreeing to release him. Similarly, the name of the daughter of the Jian family spread throughout Lingcheng, and no one dared to treat him as a junior. It's just a clown jumping off a beam, it can't become a climate, but it seems that you don't know some things. Shangguan Yuan smiled mysteriously. Yin Xiangxi saw the other person's calm demeanor, and Xing's eyes were full of confusion. He whispered, "Are you referring to the identity of the head of the opposite sex marquis?" The status of a marquis is not only a symbol of noble status, but also a proof of strength. In the Jian family, they call the head of the household marquis in Jian Yan the crown prince, but they do not call them that outside, and for some reason, they do not know. Let's talk while walking. Chapter 4. Conversations. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Jian Yan locked herself in the room and began preparing sachets. In recent years, apart from not being good at cultivation, he has been learning from Yang, who is a colorist, to distinguish various heavenly and earthly treasures, but he has no plans to become a colorist. There are only two professions in this world, one is a spiritual practitioner who mainly cultivates spiritual power, and the other is a colorful master, the latter is highly respected. Color masters can refine color crystals, which are divided into spirit crystals and demon crystals. The former is made from various heavenly and earthly treasures, supplemented by the inner alchemy of demon beasts, which can increase the cultivation of spirit masters. The latter combines the inner alchemy of demon beasts with essence and blood, and adds other advanced materials to eliminate the animalistic and violent energy in the inner alchemy. After refining, they can learn the corresponding bloodline talent of demon beasts, but only color masters with 3 colors or above can refine demon crystals. The reason why Jian Yan is unwilling to become a colorist is because the threshold for becoming a colorist is too strict. In addition to having excellent soul power talent, she also needs to study the medicinal conflicts between various medicinal herbs. One mistake is to abandon all previous efforts. In addition, becoming a powerful colorist may not have much to do with one's own cultivation, but it also has a certain impact. As long as it comes to cultivation, he loses his fighting spirit. Preparing sachets does not require much pharmacological knowledge, and there is no need to consider any pharmacological conflicts. With just his sense of smell and purification methods learned from Yang, he can extract ingredients in varying doses from some common flowers and plants, grind them, sew them into various colored cotton fabrics, and the sachet is made. So far, he has refined over 1,000 sachets, and the aroma emitted by each sachet has never been repeated. His sister jokingly called his sense of smell like a hunting dog. The sachet made by Crown Prince Jian himself is worth a precious gem. He doesn't lack spiritual skills, he just wants to pass the boring time, just like a body technique called wind step that he learned when he was 6 years old. This martial art was considered a bad street in ancient times, but he practiced it for 10 years and couldn't learn anything else. With this martial arts skill, I don't know how many times I have escaped death in my sister's hands. Even my sister is very convinced, saying that if it weren't for the absolute suppression of cultivation, the difference in realm would be too great, and no one in the same realm could catch up with me. Speaking of a dignified 7-foot man, it is shameful that he only knows one kind of body technique and martial arts used for escape. However, apart from being in front of his own sister, he has no chance to use this move in front of others. After all, Xiao Yu, who is responsible for protecting himself every day, has impressive strength. The name of the crown prince is well known to everyone in Lingcheng, and some people mock it. Among them, the Li and Wu families are the most famous. Even the Jian family's 1 acre and 3 fen land dare to be called the crown prince. Does the family have a high title to inherit? Crown prince, why are you still locking the door when Miss has left? Shortly after the sweet and soft female voice came, a knock on the door continued. Jian Yan was somewhat surprised and quickly opened the door. In her eyes was a stunning young girl's face, with skin that could be blown and broken like frost and snow. She had a delicate figure and playfully blinked at herself. The young man was slightly stunned, then patted his head, yes. In the past, he either prepared sachets or brewed and tasted tea himself. My elder sister said he neglected his cultivation, which made him unwilling to continue studying Fengbu. Although he only knew this martial arts skill, he could still calm down his anger when he was serious. However, my elder sister left in a hurry and couldn't wait until tomorrow. After finishing her meal, he handed over some things and left. Why are you here? I should have Xiao Yu lead the people from the execution hall to pick you up, that's what it's called, pulling the wind. Jian Yan rubbed Xiangxi's little head. Xiangxi squinted her eyes slightly, looking lazy like a kitten. She swept away the cold and lonely appearance in the low-level spiritual courtyard, and it was not an exaggeration to say that she looked like 2 people. In fact, it's only been 2 months since we last met. However, although the crown prince doesn't love practicing, he is extremely handsome. She dare not say that every time she practices in the spiritual academy, she feels a bit scared, afraid that there will be better girls by his side when he comes back. How ostentatious. I'm just a little beggar I picked up, and besides, I've gained a lot of attention in the spiritual courtyard. Xiangxi proudly looked up and waved her pink fist. The agile young girl was within reach, exhaling like a orchid, with a rosy and white face that looked incredibly beautiful. Jian Yan was a bit stunned, shaking her head. In memory, the little beggar was still the same person with a dirty body, thin and weak bones, and malnutrition. Xiangxi finally lowered her head with embarrassment, and Jian Yan also realized. She picked up the sachet she had prepared from the table and said with a proud expression, I picked some wild flowers and grass from the roadside. You're lucky. The girl didn't say anything, just felt a warm current in her heart, and put the sachet at the tip of her heart. Little girl, do you know what day it is today? Jian Yan raised her eyebrows and showed a wicked smile. Xiangxi was stunned and tilted her head. After thinking for a long time, Tan's mouth slightly opened and he said, the day when Sister Chang left. The 2 of them stared big and small, and immediately made a tacit chuckle. If Sister Chang is here, I'm afraid both of them will be beaten up. No, it's not. Jian Yan shook her head, although it was also something worth celebrating. Xiangxi lovingly spat out her fragrant tongue and said softly, I can't guess, but apart from the departure of the eldest sister, the crown prince probably has nothing else to be happy about. Fool, today is your birthday, but I don't know which day it is, so let's count it as the day I picked you up. Jian Yan gently scraped Xiangxi's chioung nose. Xiangxi exclaimed in surprise, followed by a clear and bright mist appearing in her pupils. Her red eyes and thoughts lingered for a long time before finally biting her silver teeth and asking, why is the crown prince treating me so well? Aren't you without parents? I'm just my brother. We'll get married sooner or later. I'll be good to you. I'll give you some of Lingcheng's other sisters, and I'll give you the ones I don't have. With a higher perspective, you won't be deceived by men in the future, Jian Yan scratched her head and said. He wanted to hug and comfort her like he did when he was a child, but as the little beggar grew up, it wasn't good either. He could only stare at her eagerly, hoping that her mood would improve. Brother Yuan came with me today and he told me something. Yin Xiangxi looked up and only gave a rough idea, his expression complex, wanting to see the crown prince react. I know, does he like you? He's also a good candidate, Jian Yan muttered. He is handsome and has strong strength. Even though he is from Kyoto, he is envious even if he is a woman. Yin Xiangxi was somewhat disappointed, but perhaps due to being more mature than girls of the same age, she still forced a smile and said, "The crown prince, rest early. I have received a gift from my elder sister. Don't be so sad, you came very quickly today. Even if you didn't see my sister, it's okay. She will come back in a year." Jian Yan comforted her, probably guessing the reason why the girl was unhappy. Yin Xiangxi nodded, trying to squeeze out a smile, but feeling powerless, she gently covered the door. A sigh of aging sounded. Who? Jian Yan's face was full of vigilance. She looked inside the room and found that there was indeed no second person present. Is it auditory hallucination, he thought to himself. But that sigh was so clear. Xiaonian, have you fallen asleep? There was a knocking outside the door, but he had not heard any footsteps before. Even so, he knew it was his father's voice, perhaps his father's sigh. He always did this in the deep silence of the night. Opening the door again, a middle-aged man with thick and black eyebrows caught the eye. His features were cold and handsome with sharp edges, his chest was broad, and his lips had a sickly pale color. This was due to drinking alcohol all year round. Dad, what's up? Jian Yan looked suspicious. Today, Dad doesn't have any alcohol smell on him, which is truly rare. Did your sister really leave? Jian Tianjiao frowned. Yeah, now you know you're nervous. Jian Yan joked. I can't say she's nervous. She can't go into that place either. It's just a matter of getting angry with me, but when a little girl goes out to explore, I inevitably feel a bit worried. Jian Tianjiao looked up and down at this son who doesn't like cultivation and joked, I feel like you and your sister have the wrong gender. Perhaps, but cultivation is boring. It's exhausting to fight and kill. Jian Yan has no obsession with becoming a strong person, but rather envies the vendors selling various miscellaneous items in the street market, lying on chairs, basking in the sunshine, shaking fans, feeling uncomfortable. I really want to be like this every day when I get old. Yes, it's really tiring, so I never had any hope for you, your father. After all, no matter how strong your strength is, there is always someone stronger than you. As the saying goes, there are people outside of us, and there are heavens outside of us. After years of cultivation, we still end up with nothing. Jian Yan shook his head, taking the lead in finishing what his father had to say. Stinky kid, did you start teasing me? Jian Tianjiao laughed and cursed. Hee, how dare you, Dad. It's just that these words sound like a cocoon. Do you have anything else to do, old man? Jian Yan asked seriously. After hesitating for a moment, Jian Tianjiao finally shook his head and said, actually, this is really good. Before, you practiced very fast, but you were not happy. When your mother came back at the age of 5 and found out she was fine, you reading www.yuyukeangshu.net. Although she was no longer interested in practicing, she no longer had any worries. Her smile gradually increased and she continued to maintain it. Dad patted his shoulder a few times with a smile on his face, seemingly satisfied with his answer. The force of the slap made his shoulder collapse, causing some soreness. Go to bed early. After leaving this sentence, the old man left the room, and Jian Yan finally felt a ripple in her heart. In this era of the jungle, the biggest reason why he didn't take the ordinary path was because he had an old father and the elders of the Jian family. He really had peace of mind. Although it sounded like he had no ambition, he couldn't change it. He had no interest in cultivation. But today there is a feeling of being treated by my own sister. Sigh. That sigh again. Who is sighing and sighing? Jian Nian looked at the wooden box on the table, which was a gift given to her by her sister before leaving, and now it emitted a milky white luster. My elder sister said it was left by my mother. She originally wanted to take it for herself, as she had no ambition and it was useless to keep it for herself. However, after years of research and consulting with the director of the Spirit Academy, I still couldn't understand the origin of this item. What exactly is it? Jian Nian took a deep breath and slowly walked over. He kicked lightly with his foot, but nothing happened. He mustered up the courage to open the wooden box and saw a palm-sized incomplete sheepskin scroll with dense and obscure text. The moment he saw it, it shook his mind. There is also a dark ring below, which must be a storage space ring. He plays with it like an old woman gently stroking an ancestral jade necklace. With a whoosh, the fluorescent sheepskin roll turned into a dot of light and entered his forehead. In an instant, Jian Nian was struck by lightning, leaving his mind blank. After spinning around, he rubbed his eyes, but his eyes were in chaos. Sigh. Chapter 5. Frozen Throne. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Being in the chaotic void, Jian Nian was really afraid of accidentally falling. I haven't seen anyone enter the space ring either. He took 4 or 5 steps, as if he could smell a pungent smell of blood, and with each step he took, the smell became a bit strong, making his stomach churn with disgust. Hey, who are you? You're pretending to be mischievous. I'm going out, be careful, I'll make my dad beat you up. Jian Nian shouted loudly. Woo-woo. Whether it was the sound of the wind or the mournful roar of some unknown ghost, he perked up his ears and widened his eyes, but before him was still a gray-white world. Don't worry, your father can't come here either. Maybe your mother can barely do it, but... An elderly person with an ethereal voice and a history, but full of vitality, always feels far away from oneself, as if the words are not finished, and the other person has no intention of continuing. Jian Nian couldn't help but imagine her mother's audio smile in her mind. Even after 10 years, she still remembered the beautiful face that loved to smile. Even though the smell of blood was still pungent, Jian Nian walked forward and soon began to jog. He saw a glimmer of light ahead, and as he approached, the surroundings became brighter and brighter, forming a long corridor. There are murals carved on both sides of the corridor. At the beginning, the content was relatively simple, mainly focusing on animals and plants. Some were natural treasures that he did not recognize, while others were pictures of monsters that he did not recognize. They were either terrifying or sacred, and the murals were vividly carved. Longzuko. Jian Nian was taken aback. This was a type of treasure he had come across, which he had never seen in reality, but had seen illustrations. Yaonyang said that it was a treasure that was used to refine many colorful crystals. When it matured, weeds did not grow for 100 miles, and it would devour all living things, even weaker spiritual beings. But unlike the illustrations seen in the past, Jian Nian can even feel the pure yang breath it emits, making the blood inside the body seem to boil, accompanied by an indescribable medicinal fragrance. Lion Dragon. Jian Nian's face turned pale with fear, and she saw a monster that looked like a lion, but was even more powerful and domineering. It had 2 exposed black fangs and purple mane. It was rumored to be the 6th son of a dragon in mythology. She was always quiet and not fond of movement, easy to sit, and liked fireworks. She was often used to decorate the feet of incense burners and was considered an auspicious beast. But he could even smell the monster aura on the lion dragon and hear the beating of a drum like heartbeat. The corridor is not long, with nothing on the left and increasingly dense murals on the right. There are Buddha deities and countless winged creatures dancing in the boundless starry sky. Some hold lotus buds and soar straight into the clouds, some dive down from the sky like shooting stars, some pass through towering buildings and towers, like wandering dragons, and some sway with the wind, like the world of gods. At this moment, Jian Nian seemed to understand something, took several steps back, and saw the broken edges of the mural. It wasn't carved on any wall, perhaps because it was relatively close before, and didn't notice anything. Now, 10 meters apart, isn't this the broken sheepskin roll left by the mother in the wooden box? I just didn't expect it to be so big. He walked almost 100 meters, but he couldn't see the end, let alone the person who pretended to be mischievous. Pop! With a crisp snap of his fingers, the surroundings became bright, and a blue throne floated in the air, emitting a chill. He sat alone on it, with his right hand resting on his head and his left hand playing with a golden bead. He was about to approach and take a closer look when he saw the gray and white mist spreading under the blue throne, and a haggard, ghostly face appeared in front of him. Ghosts. Jian Nian sat down on the ground, even forgetting to run, trembling and pointing at this dirty, foul-smelling, and terrifying female ghost. She was dressed in rags, and the blood flowing from her eyes had also coagulated, as if she had been beaten to death before her death, or if her spirits were still lingering. Her name is Yi Xie Na Mei Ming, you can call her Yi Xie Na Mei, just like its name, it was extremely beautiful during its lifetime, the man said. While Jian Nian was shocked, it was not difficult to notice that although the other person was walking with a corpse, upon closer inspection, if it weren't for the blood on their face and bruises on their arms, or something like a corpse spot, their face would still be pale and cold. He swallowed his saliva. He shouldn't have such unrealistic ideas. Even if he looked good during his lifetime, he was a ghost. If I gave you enough reason, wouldn't you be able to practice? The voice came again, with a certain eagerness. Jian Nian looked up, not too afraid anymore, because the female ghost disappeared into the darkness again, as if suppressed by this frozen throne. It is also possible that there is at least one living person here, and the other person looks quite kind-hearted, elegant and handsome, but they should be one step behind themselves. No, why does everyone except my father force me to practice? Fighting and killing are not fun at all. When I'm 18, it's good to marry a wife and tease the children, isn't it? Jian Nian stared at me with clear eyes. His world is very simple, he doesn't cultivate for anyone. Anyway, according to the wishes of his father and elders, as long as he doesn't leave Lingcheng in this lifetime, the heavenly King Laozi will have no choice but to take advantage of him as the second ancestor. Although he may sit and observe the sky, he enjoys this pleasure quite a bit. Living in this era, unavoidable, don't you want to know why you can't leave Lingcheng? The voice carried some kind of temptation. Jian Nian hesitated for a moment. He asked his father, but he asked him not to forget to give him a few pounds of wine when he goes out to fight chickens and watch movies. He also asked his sister, and she first smiled and asked him to go over and tell him. Then she pulled her ear and said, "Don't bother her if you don't practice, otherwise you'll beat her up every time you ask." Perhaps there are some old father's enemies outside of Lingcheng, or it could be some kind of verbal agreement that as long as you step out of Lingcheng, something bad will happen. 1 second, half a minute, 1 minute. 3 minutes have passed, but the other person still has no intention of speaking. I thought you silly kid really didn't know anything. You were well protected by your family, so childish. So you're really not promising. His voice was speechless, but even the air was filled with disappointment. Jian Nian is not a foolish person. After meeting her mother, her sister, who treated her cultivation as a child's play, began to cultivate. Her father, who used to call the wind and rain in Lingcheng, also became an alcoholic, and she couldn't be said to be in a slump. Her mother lived a carefree life, and she lost the meaning of cultivation. But 10 years have passed, why hasn't my mother come back? Do you know my mother? Finally, it was Jian Nian's turn to ask. The first time she awakened me, but she wasn't strong enough to come here. The man paused, sat up upright, exuding a fierce and mysterious aura, and said, "You can come in because your heart is relatively calm and there is no pursuit. The more persistent the person in your heart, the less you can come here no matter what." "Does obsession mean desire?" Jian Nian asked. The man nodded, his skin very white, and his handsome features looked particularly bright. If there were some blood stains on his body, Jian Nian also thought he would be a dead person. After all, the dead would also put on some makeup before being buried in the coffin. "My name is Anonymous." The man spoke again and introduced himself. "My name is Yumingshi." With a loud bang, the young man's head instantly swelled. "Oh, why did you hit me?" Jian Nian covered her head and gritted her teeth in pain. Although the man in front of her did not move, there seemed to be no other living person besides him. "I'm used to being serious, and I don't like people joking with me." The man's voice was flat, not angry and self-threatening. Jian Nian was furious. It seems like this person was joking first, right? Still unknown, Yu reading www.yuyukeangshu.net is mysterious and deceived into coming here. He has a gentle personality and cannot bear this injustice for no reason. Thinking of this, he took out a 6-colored crystal from his arms. Not to mention Lingcheng, looking at the entire 30.6 cities of Yunzhou, there is no colorist who can refine such colored crystals. This is also why he believes his father has the title of Champion Marquis. When his mother returned at the age of 5, she brought several of these colorful crystals. She and her sister each had 3 of them, saying that whoever bullied her in the future would inject spiritual power into them. However, try not to use them when other family and friends are around, because except for those who inject spiritual power, all life will instantly turn into powder within the energy range that ignites the colorful crystals. My mother said, "This item cannot be used unless absolutely necessary." "Let me go, young master." "I will let it go, and I will count down 3 times, 3. It seems that the other party didn't even give him a corner of their eye. 2. 1. Jian Nian no longer hesitated, injected spiritual power, and then threw it at the opponent, causing the colorful crystal to shatter with a loud bang. After a while Jian Nian sighed and rubbed her head, saying that there was nothing left to grow. Nothing happened. Not reliable. He was a bit scared because the man named Anonymous stared at him with a smile on his face. "Your mother had to hide in the restricted area to save me, so she refined 6 explosive crystals for her. These are my things and useless to me," said the anonymous person calmly. "I'll give you 2 choices, either stay here with me for the rest of your life, or learn from me and I can help you find your mother's body." As soon as the words fell, Jane read her head buzzing with red eyes. The great sadness was like the storm under the lead clouds, endless, endless. Chapter 6. Past Events. You are listening at novelfull.audio. You're talking nonsense. He saw her 10 years ago, and her mother said she was very powerful. At least her father couldn't beat him, and his father was also considered a first-class powerhouse in Lingcheng. Because it woke up. The mournful female ghost under the frozen throne reappeared, but this time the boy no longer felt terrifying, stood up, and looked straight at the man in front of him. "Your mother used to either leave the forbidden area or seal the female ghost you mentioned. With my help, she spared no effort to establish a contract with it at all costs. That's why I said she saved me. When your mother was alive, it was lifeless. If your mother died, it would come to life. This is an awakening technique that I have mastered, the awakening technique and the life contract. How could I not understand it?" Upon hearing this, Jian Nian felt a sense of unease in her heart and couldn't cry, but her body kept trembling. She thought of her sister who had just left last night, and for a moment, she had some faith in her. But he still shook his head desperately and took a few steps back. He knew that some things, as long as they were not seen with his own eyes, should have hoped for that miracle. "To be honest, I quite admire your mother. She clearly didn't need to go back, but she went back in for this egg and so. Called morality, and never came out again. My final impression was that I gave her the refined explosive crystal, while your mother gave your father the soul ring where I and this female ghost were hiding. In a blink of an eye, it has been more than 20 years. The Nameless has an old voice that is completely different from her appearance, deep and profound, as if she has separated from the world. Is my mother dead? Are you trying to deceive me into practicing? If that's the case, I'll tell you earlier. I'll work hard to cultivate. You don't have to scare me anymore. Jian Yen said word by word, filled with some kind of hope. Whether you cultivate or not has nothing to do with me originally. I would rather it be your sister who comes here, but she has too much obsession and cannot enter. Nameless paused for a moment, her face softened a bit, and said, I didn't deceive you. To be able to enter this soul ring, besides having the same strength as me or having a pure mind, there is another main condition, which is that the soul ring is in an ownerless state. Your mother met this main condition. Although her strength is not enough, she didn't have much obsession before meeting your father, so she came in. After you gave birth, as a new mother, she probably can't let go of this obsession. Although as the owner of the soul ring, you have never been able to enter again. Now, the soul ring is an ownerless object, and you meet the two conditions for entering the soul ring. This statement, like a cold judgment of life, also shattered the last glimmer of hope in Jian Yan's heart. Why does my father and sister never tell me? Maybe I will work hard to cultivate, maybe. Oh, if your mother's second entry into the penalty area is commendable for her moral courage, then this first time, she was actually pushed to the extreme by others. Although I don't know how strong your father's words are, since I can capture your mother's heart, I think her strength is not average, but she is powerless. In other words, even if you work hard to cultivate, even the forces that forced your mother to enter the penalty area for the first time back then have no choice. As for wanting to go to the penalty area, it is undoubtedly a foolish dream. Speaking of it, you must understand your family. If I tell you, your innate talent is enough in this barren world to become a hegemon, but when you reveal your identity, what awaits you is undoubtedly death. As for going to the forbidden area to save your mother, it will only lead to faster death. Perhaps it's not because you have lost the motivation to cultivate in these years, but now you have died in the hands of your enemies. The words of the anonymous person do not carry any hint of mockery. He is used to seeing too many lives and deaths, but he is not willing to bully a little kid. Is there no hope at all? Aren't you very impressive? He originally intended to say that with obsession, he had the reason for cultivation, not to become a strong person, but just to reunite with his family, but it seemed difficult to achieve in the eyes of the person in front of him. You little rascal, even if you ask for help, there will be times when you will succumb. I have suffered a serious Tao injury and will continue to imprison this god. If I let it go, it doesn't matter if the soul ring is broken. The outside world will inevitably suffer. Not only can I help you, but I also need your help to continue imprisoning this god, because in a year, my spiritual power will also be depleted. Anonymous smiled gently. Everything in this world depends on human factors, how can there be no hope? Jian Yan was very dissatisfied and really desperate to the point where she was better off than struggling. Ah, the forbidden area, also known as the tomb of the living and dead, is either eaten by monsters, or possessed by evil spirits and turned into a walking corpse. Your mother is a woman who can survive for 10 years, it's really amazing. The anonymous star's eyes flickered with admiration, and the conversation suddenly changed, saying, but even if you know the danger well, you must break through hard. Your mother is much more powerful than your father. Although I cannot communicate with people, I heard their conversation when this soul ring was still in your father and sister's hands. Your father has some kind of seal on his body, which is like a mark. Once he leaves Ling, I will break through. The city will be pursued by hostile forces, but over time, the power of the seal will gradually fade away. Has it failed? Jian Yan's eyes lit up. In a few decades or even 100 years, it should fail. Seeing the young man's face full of disappointment, Anonymous smiled slightly and said, "Do you still have the courage to continue listening?" Jian Nian was stunned, and the sudden fear made him unsure how to answer. "Speak up." Finally, he seemed to have made some decision. The Nameless sighed and said, "So your father transferred this seal to your sister. The good thing is that your father doesn't have to suppress his cultivation, but at this critical moment, he may be able to give a fatal blow to his former enemies. The bad thing is that once he uses his real strength, your sister will be tracked by this force. It sounds like a chicken, but according to your mother's opinion, in order to repay your father's kindness, the ancient royal family made a promise to protect your family, not to tell the enemy forces your family's location, at the cost of cultivation blockade. This is an unwritten agreement in the spirit world, and disaster is not enough for the next generation. As long as you two siblings never break through to the spirit world for life, as long as you don't break through to the next generation. Dan Realm, I won't take any action against you. Of course, the premise is that there is a credible force involved. Your sister is not just in the spirit Dan realm, I think. Since she made this choice, the ancient royal family will also tell the other party about your sister's information. So, do you know why your sister didn't tell you these things, but why do you want you to work hard to cultivate? The young man fell silent for a moment. I told you, it was me who left the seal, but it was also me who died the earliest. My sister wanted me to take responsibility like a man, but she also wanted to maintain the status quo. At least I could live well, but I couldn't hold on to this matter. I'll know sooner or later. Jian Nian couldn't calm down and stood there dumbfounded. Not entirely. According to the conversation I heard, your father would tell these things after your sister leaves, because even if you want to take the initiative to leave a seal, it's too late. After all, it requires a certain level of cultivation to do so. As for whether to seek revenge or not, it's your responsibility. But your father didn't say it today. He probably doesn't want you to break through the spiritual pill realm and break the cultivation blockade. The anonymous person's expression was calm and peaceful, and he pondered, actually, I really don't want to be this sinner and break the balance of your family. But as I just told you, I only have 1 year. If I pay the price of my life, I can indeed wipe out the undead, but... Well, I'm always a bit unwilling, so I can only tell you the truth. Even if you don't hate me, at least your father and sister will hate me as an old man. Jian Yen looked at the other person. He was not old, but not to mention his father and sister, he also disliked him a bit. He could have been the second-generation ancestor of Lingcheng without any worries. Yu reading www.yuyukeangshu.net. Thank you, at least not until my dear sister had an accident, and thank you for telling me after my sister left that if you really wait for me to be in my 20s or 30s, my cultivation will fall behind too much, and no matter how hard I try, it will be of no use. Jian Yen let out a mouthful of turbid air. My dear sister may resent me in her heart. She is only 2 years older than me, but she has endured too much pressure. As a girl, she is more qualified to live carefree in Lingcheng than me, but she gave me this opportunity. The premise is that he will never cultivate and cannot leave Lingcheng. She also knew that if she told herself all of this, he would become a fearsome cultivator at the age of 5 who practiced day and night, taking on everything like a man. But in the end, she would only scold herself for not being ambitious and not saying anything. Because my elder sister is also afraid that once she breaks through the spiritual pill realm, she will lose her close relatives and never find a brother who can be bullied by her recklessly. The next day, her little tail seems to be following her side. Thinking of this, the boy's tears welled up and he didn't make a sound. When sadness reaches its peak, even crying will disappear. Don't worry too much, the 6 colored crystals that I refined are not ordinary things. Moreover, the imperial family of the ancient country only told those forces about her information, but they didn't keep an eye on her all the time. Moreover, with your sister's strength, she probably won't attract their attention. Maybe they can charge some interest before revenge. Regarding your mother, I can only guarantee one thing. If your mother is dead, Cough cough cough. As he looked at the boy's red eyes like rabbits, Anonymous changed his mind and said, "Forget it, let's just say it's a physical body. Let's make you feel better. If her physical body hasn't been shared by the monsters in the forbidden area, I can guarantee one thing. As long as you can kill this fierce ghost, I can resurrect your mother, even if it's a white bone." Chapter 7. Forced Apprenticeship. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Even if it's a skeleton. It sounds like a celestial tale. Is there really such a means in the world? Jian Yan's eyes were filled with disbelief. Before I appeared, there was none. The anonymous person's mouth slightly curved upwards. "Master, from today on, you will be my master. I will carry forward my master's legacy. It's not too late, let's go to the restricted area first." Jian Yan let out a splash and knelt on the ground without any dignity. He knocked his head 3 times without knowing the pain, and blood appeared on his forehead, regaining hope in his heart. "Are you going to save someone or be buried with them? I understand your feelings, but the difficulty involved is beyond your imagination. Let's not say anything else, you need to be prepared to leave Lingcheng and be chased," said the anonymous person in silence. How could there be an illusion of seeking this kid's apprenticeship? Are you mentally prepared? If that's the case, I'm already prepared. Jian Yan tilted her head and said. Not only that, become a colorist because it is a respected profession that can provide you with many conveniences along the way. This is also one of the conditions to save your mother. You need to refine a 7-color colored crystal, and only you can refine it, replied Anonymous. Which is more difficult, becoming a colorful master or killing that female monster? Jian Yan only wanted to save her mother, putting the rest aside. How to say it? The nameless on the frozen throne fell into contemplation. If you can kill this female monster now, I'll take you as my teacher. The nameless joked. Then I'd better become a colorful master. The corner of the nameless' mouth twitched slightly, and she couldn't help but say, if it were your sister, I would barely have this confidence. It's a coincidence that your sister's talent as a colorful master has even made me plan to recruit female disciples for the first time, but she wants to become a strong one. You, with average soul power talent, want to become a colorful master even more. How many years does master think I can become a colorful master? If it were 7 or 8 years, he would still be willing to give it a try, it's just about his mother. He shook his head, I dare not think deeply about such things. Within 20 years, said the Anonymous. Upon hearing these words, Jian Yan's heart was also splashed with cold water. Kid, don't be too ambitious. You also have a lottery master in the Jian family. As long as you're not foolish enough, if you're really a second-generation ancestor, how do you know the difficulty? The nameless looked at the slightly disappointed young man and could only comfort him. Jian Yan naturally knew that it took Yang Yang no less than 30 years to advance from a 1-color teacher to a 5-color teacher, and the assessment of a 6-color teacher also took more than 20 years, but she never succeeded. The higher the strength of a spiritual being, the longer their lifespan. It is common for people several hundred years old. According to elders, this age can only be considered as a young person in the world of spiritual beings. But becoming a colorist requires practicing the fire attribute cultivation techniques, which our Jian family also has. Master, do you have a slightly higher level one? Jian Yan asked with a thick face. Since I have become a disciple and have not gained anything, it would be a great loss to be an apprentice. The cultivation of martial arts determines the spiritual strength of spiritual beings, while martial arts determine the upper limit of their combat power. Martial arts is a combination of martial arts and awakening techniques. The former is related to the spirit, while the latter is related to the colorful master. And martial arts can be divided into 2 categories, spiritual martial arts and animal martial arts. The former is a self-created move that the spirit person has some understanding of, without specific level division. For animal martial arts, it is judged based on the strength of the monster beast and belongs to a type of martial arts that can only be accessed by characters with backgrounds. As for the cultivation techniques, they are similar to the awakening techniques practiced by Kai-Shi. There are 4 levels of cultivation, namely the creation of the universe and the ultimate level of immortality. Each level is further subdivided. For example, the cultivation techniques at the creation level are divided into low-level, intermediate, and high-level martial arts. However, the cultivation techniques and awakening techniques at the Qianquan level are only different from those at the small and large levels. As for the immortal level and ultimate level, it is unknown because the highest level cultivation technique in the entire Lingcheng is his Jian family's small Qianquan level cultivation technique, the Thunder Spirit technique. If you want to become a colorist, the best cultivation method for Jian's fire attribute is only the intermediate level Fire Yang technique of creation. Anonymous shook his head, revealing a mysterious smile. He spread out his hands and saw 3 different colors of scrolls, red, black, and white, appearing from left to right. Only those pedantic guys use spiritual flames, I use soul flames. A strand of white flames rose in the nameless hand, jumping on his fingertips like an elf, causing the temperature around him to suddenly rise. The nameless said expressionlessly, the red light cluster is called the 6 techniques of floating life, which is also my own cultivation technique. It can give spiritual power 1 main attribute and 5 secondary attributes, making it an immortal cultivation technique. Hush. Jian Nian has also seen good things before, but this cheap master did not disappoint her. The black light group was found by your mother from a relic in the forbidden area, called the Fengshen Ju. Prior to this Ju came from a power outside the domain, but its hand was extended too long. It once wanted to kill me, but... Have you been destroyed by your master? Jian Nian asked. No, your master won't casually show off his strength because in the eyes of the world, Kai-Shi's combat power is extremely weak. As a teacher, he won't find his way, so he won't take action unless absolutely necessary. This is also the first principle that I teach you. Hide it, otherwise you might not be able to see me today. Anonymous sighed slightly. Some old things, even in the past decade, are still heartbreaking. Also, don't interrupt my teacher's speech in the future. The anonymous person looked at his disciple with a smile, a hint of malice. Jian Nian's expression was casual, and she nodded like a chicken pecking at rice. However, a huge wave stirred up in her heart. Although she didn't know what her master's strength was, her words made countless strong people willingly erase a force. What a great attraction! The origin of the Fengshen Ju is somewhat unique. Before your mother brought it out, I never believed that there was such a domineering and evil cultivation method in this world. It's a pity that although your sister can communicate with me, this object has a special mark, which is a soul jade slip, not simply recorded in words, so it cannot be learned. Hearing master's words made Jian Nian increasingly interested. Do you know the difference between immortal level and ultimate level? The anonymous glanced at the young man and saw him shake his head, explaining, there are 2 levels of immortal level martial arts. Small immortal level and spiritual immortal level. This is already the pinnacle of martial arts and awakening skills. As for ultimate level, it is commonly said that these types of martial arts no longer have level restrictions because they have infinite potential and are buried in 2 places. One is the battlefield of killing gods, the other is spiritual traces, and the divine sealing method is a ultimate cultivation method that only super first-class forces can access. And even I have never seen anyone carry it. It is rumored that there are only 3 types of people who possess this technique. Reincarnation, first generation, and so-called orthodoxy. Jian Nian wanted to ask, but he didn't dare to interrupt his master's conversation. He understood the last one, the super first-class force, which must be very powerful. This technique can devour the original spiritual power of others, and every time it devours the original spiritual power of 3 people with higher strength than oneself, it must break through a small realm. Even if it is a barrier between the major realms, it can still break through. If it devours other spiritual beings carrying this technique, it can also break through a small realm, and there is no problem of spiritual power floating due to forced breakthroughs. Of course, unless the 3 spiritual beings you devour are all cultivated by taking drugs. Upon hearing this, Jian Yan's face changed. How could such a cultivation of martial arts be described as domineering? If there were such a lucky person who obtained the divine sealing technique and had a strong background, perhaps at the age of 20, they would have had hundreds or even thousands of years of cultivation from others. Finally, the master looked at the last white light cluster, which emitted the weakest light. It has no name, it was deduced by me, and there is no level division because it lacks human verification. It will not bring any attribute blessings to spiritual power, but it can use itself as a seed and heaven and earth as a furnace to break and recast spiritual power. Perhaps it is stronger than the ultimate cultivation method, but it is not as good as the lowest level of the creation low-level method, because to cultivate it, one must go through death. Death in the true sense. With a slightly complicated gaze, the anonymous person paused word by word, dead body, dead spirit, dead heart, so you have another reason to become a lottery master. This is his masterpiece, but no one dares to try it. If it weren't for his epiphany, he already had decent strength when studying this path. He would be willing to give up all attempts. Jian Yan hesitated a bit. The master seemed serious, but his words were so scary. He was so full that he didn't choose the ultimate martial arts method. He chose this unnamed martial arts method and became the master's little white mouse. Master, apprentice. I know you would be disappointed if you didn't choose this method, but I really want strength. Can't you only suppress that female ghost for a year? Choosing the latter, I have a mistake. Where can you find another foolish apprentice who is willing to believe your lies? Jian Yan was stared at by her master, knowing that he had nothing to say before daring to speak. Unless what? Asked the anonymous person seriously. Unless I can practice 2 techniques simultaneously, Jian Yan pursed his lips. Cultivating techniques is not a martial art, the latter is a skill that does not overwhelm the body. The former can only have one type, because different cultivation techniques have different mental methods for refining spiritual power. If there is a conflict, it can be mild, slow, or even impossible to improve, and severe, spiritual power can repel and ignite oneself. Then you have agreed, and I will allow you to cultivate 2 types of martial arts. Yu Reading Book www.yuukangshu.net. Congratulations, becoming my second disciple. You are blessed. Without waiting for the young man to react, the black and white light clusters transformed into 2 streams of light that shot into the center of his eyebrows. The second layer of this divine sealing technique can only convert the opponent's spiritual power attribute into personal use. Before that, you need to complete one thing. Hatch this little thing, otherwise you won't be able to save your mother. I think you will be in dire straits. The Nameless said and handed the golden insect egg in his hand to the young man. Jian Yan was stunned and his head was slightly hurting. Countless mnemonics were floating in his heart. He widened his eyes and looked at the master who had shown such a hint of shame towards him, but his words fell silent for a moment. Don't feel bad, young man. All the benefits in this world come at a cost. Why do you think you are qualified to do things that others see as impossible? Is it because you are handsome? Or is it because you have a very powerful guide? No, it's only you. The anonymous person earnestly advised, and the young man's wide mouth seemed to be able to fill an egg. How could you boast so much? Jian Yan lowered her head, wanting to cry without tears. Prepare these things first, and I will interpret my unnamed cultivation method for you in the remaining time. Don't think it's a big deal. It's impossible for me not to cultivate. Although your spiritual power nature has not changed, as long as your spiritual power is running, I can still feel it. I won't let you leave until you succeed in cultivation. Jian Nian is about to cry without tears. Why is this master so anxious? The first step is to gather spiritual power in the elixir field. I will inject my soul power into your mind. Don't resist, I will gather a trace of soul fire for you. If you are distracted, your spirit and soul will be destroyed. After success, I will teach you the spiritual chapter of this cultivation method, which will also serve as a secret method for soul cultivation. In the mysterious space, the young man sighed and could only follow the step by step. Chapter 8. Proposal. You are listening at novelfull.audio. For a long time, the fair face of the young man had a faint fluorescence, and his spiritual power had become thicker. All the strange meridians and 8 meridians in his body were opened up, giving rise to an indescribable sense of lightness. The unnamed martial arts are divided into 3 stages. Body, spirit, and heart, with regard to the dead body, spirit, and heart. The primary task in the early stage of the body movement is to unblock the 365 acupoints in the human body and tap into one's own talents. Master said that there is no shortage of spiritual beings in this world who follow the wild path of refining their bodies. However, the acupoints on the human body are complex, and it is even more difficult to open them up. It is necessary to follow a certain order of opening up, otherwise the meridians will be damaged. Learning spiritual martial arts also requires opening up the acupoints. If there is a conflict, even if you obtain a good spiritual martial arts skill, you can only sigh with joy. Meridians can be broken through with the external force of a strong person, provided that there is a good master who is familiar with the structure of the human body, but the acupoints are fragile and infinitely useful, just like a chicken that breaks the shell. It can also be considered to help break the shell, but such a chicken is prone to premature death, so opening the acupoints can only rely on itself. The spirit chapter is a technique for cultivating soul power. According to his original understanding, the level of a colorful master is not closely related to the cultivation of soul power. Soul power is innate and difficult to improve, and there are very few methods for cultivating soul. Therefore, colorful masters are generally from prestigious schools, and there are very few colorful masters with high levels and no background. Soul power only needs to be able to perceive the degree of refinement and temperature changes of heavenly and earthly treasures, the structure of various spiritual stones, and the remaining is the refining techniques of each colorist. As for some extremely difficult to refine heavenly and earthly treasures, they can only be slowly refined with strong fire attribute spiritual power. Compared to the physical part, the cultivation difficulty of this spiritual part is much higher, but the master's refining technique relies on soul fire to sustain it, so even if it is obscure and difficult to understand, he can only ponder it with heart. As for the heart chapter, master has not yet taught it, so he said he won't need it for a while. Is this soul fire? Can it really be used to refine heavenly and earthly treasures? It's not too hot. Jian Yen complained. Most colorists use the temperature of spiritual flame to refine natural materials and earth treasures, and use soul power to sense their essence. Soul fire directly deprives essence from natural materials and earth treasures, leaving residue, 2 concepts, said Wu Mingshi. By the way, you keep this thing. It was for this thing that I ended up with. Remember the content carefully, it contains everything. Some strange methods and pharmacological knowledge, even I was shocked to see it. Master waved his hand casually, and the endless mural continued to shrink back to its original appearance. What is this? He Mingfan was surprised. The first volume of the Comprehensive Mirror of Ancient and Modern Times, the All Things section, records all things containing vitality that have appeared until ancient and modern times. A comprehensive study of ancient and modern times. It sounds like a certain type of encyclopedia, and he doesn't have time to read it. The master said that the current task is to open more acupoints, accommodate more spiritual power than people in the same realm, improve physical fitness, and enhance strength. Alright, when you officially become a one-color master, I will give you an awakening technique. Master, with this cultivation technique and awakening technique, can you teach me more martial arts skills? I'm not picky either. Both spiritual and beast martial arts are good, but the quality is good. You just need to keep looking at it. Jian Yan rubbed his hands. Humph, it's hard to chew too much, and besides, the moves of the strong are only suitable for the strong master. Even if you learn them, you won't be able to exert any power. Hurry up and leave, otherwise the people outside will be anxious. The anonymous person wore a rushing posture. At the same time, outside the soul ring space, Xiao Yu shook the crown prince's head, his face pale. This crown prince wouldn't have gone wrong in his cultivation, would he? No, the crown prince doesn't practice either. Shake up all my brain. Jian Yan covered her head in confusion, not to mention a headache. She suddenly accepted too much and her memory became confused. Whatever she did, her mind would always think of mnemonics related to cultivation. Glancing at the wooden box, the fragment of sheepskin disappeared without a trace. There was actually a black ring at the bottom, which he put on his index finger. It must be the soul ring that his master said. We are discussing Xiangxi's marriage outside, but the Marquis doesn't know where he went. Xiangxi is the person you bought, so I want to see what you mean. Xiao Yu said quickly and helped the crown prince up. Jian Yan rubbed her temples and suddenly froze, wondering, no, Xiangxi is only 17 years old. Is Shengguan Yuan so anxious? However, it is also a good thing that he will eventually leave Lingcheng. The elders of the Jian family did not regard Xiangxi as their own, but rather as their personal maid. Before he left, Xiangxi had a good home, which was also good. Just as we applied a little force to our arms, we found an extra golden bead in our hand, but it was soft, probably like a worm egg. Crown Prince, what is that? Xiao Yu exclaimed in surprise. I don't know, take me to the living room first. Huh, Elder Jian Hong, we haven't seen each other for over a decade since we parted ways back then. The cultivation of this marquis has been sealed by those miscellaneous things. Aren't you also sealed? The old man's cheerful laughter swirled in the living room. Shengguan Lan was the elder of the Shengguan family in the ancient capital city. After the Jian family was forced to leave the capital and develop in Lingcheng, he was the only family apart from the royal family that knew the position of the Jian family. This originated from the previous head of the two families and was a good friend who shared hardships. Even though the current head of the two families, Jian Tianjiao, and Shengguan Jinyun, do not have much interaction, the elders of both families are old acquaintances. Is it possible that my cultivation level is higher than yours, but you can't feel it? Jian Hong smiled slightly. Can't you? Just the broken environment of Lingcheng. There aren't many good cultivation resources. Shengguan Lan looked at the younger generation of the two families again, and found that the cultivation speed of the Jian family's younger generation was not too high, much worse than their Shengguan family, but it should be very good in Lingcheng. Perhaps the crown prince has never given up on cultivation, even in this place where spiritual power is scarce, he can catch up with the proud son of the ancient country. For this crown prince who only met once, Shengguan Lan's impression is still quite profound. I'm curious, how could you people from the official family take notice of a maid from my Jian family? What tricks are you playing? Jian Li, the second elder of the Jian family, looked skeptical. Although Yin Xiangxi's cultivation talent is quite good, the Shengguan family, as one of the nobles in the capital, should not value a woman with such a background. Even if this little girl is a beautiful woman, Shengguan Yuan often comes to see Yin Xiangxi. The people of the Jian family think it's just a child's play, but it's too urgent to propose directly. It doesn't matter if we don't like it or not, the key is that the young master is interested. It's strange to say that the head of the house asked Shengguan Yuan to come to the low-level spiritual academy in Lingcheng to cultivate. Originally, he wanted to get close to the young lady of your Jian family. In the future, the involvement of the Shengguan family in this matter is also reasonable. However, your Jian family has really been arrogant and left the young master far behind. The young master actually has feelings for this maid who is 2 years younger than him. Since that's the case, let's go with the flow and push the boat. Shang Guanlan said lightly. Jian Li remained unmoved. If others were to believe it, even the former Jian family would be slightly inferior to the official family, let alone the weakened Jian family. If there has been some movement between the Shangguan family and the Jian family over the past decade, it would not be suspicious, but the Shangguan family has deliberately distanced themselves from the Jian family. Sudden intimacy is the most deadly. The crown prince has arrived. Some of the elderly members of the Jian family stood up trembling, except for the 2 uncles of the crown prince. Although the younger members of the Jian family were dissatisfied, they still stood up without any temper. You should know that before the Marquis's rise, the entire Jian family was really no different from the other 2 families in Lingcheng. The people of the official family only showed respect to their old masters before being polite to the people of the Jian family. Therefore, in everyone's hearts, even if the current Marquis is in a state of decline, even if the Jian family is pulled down from the altar, at least the Marquis has brought the entire Jian family to an unprecedented height. My strength is not high, my heirs are not small. A girl from the Shangguan family muttered discontentedly. However, the crown prince is quite good looking. If he wears a girl's clothes, he may look even better than an older girl. Jian Nian looked over and saw that the young girl was not very old, but her figure was uneven and graceful. However, her appearance was much worse than that of Xiang Shi. He looked around for a week, but ultimately did not see her figure. Speak a few words less, shouted an elder from the Shangguan family. If Jian Tianjiao is still alive, no one dares to underestimate the Jian family. Moreover, the woman named Jian Yingying already has a cultivation in the star realm at the age of 18, which is much better than most of the younger generations in the Shangguan family. And don't forget, the Jian family has been huddled in Lingcheng for 10 years. If it were in a wider world outside, the name of the Jian family's daughter would have already spread throughout Kyoto. Of course, now it has also spread throughout Kyoto. Although the relationship between the 2 families is fluctuating, they are not enemies at all. I really don't want to see that little girl end up in a different situation. It's really hard for a female college student to stay. Jian Nian sighed. Anyway, I hope Shangguan Yuan treats Xiangxi better. Now that he has regained his confidence in cultivation, it will narrow the gap between him and these people. But when this idea first came to mind, a man and a woman walked hand in hand like a golden boy and a jade girl, immediately attracting everyone's attention, but ultimately it all stayed with Shangguan Yuan. The cultivation level in the 100-star realm is amazing. This official kid's talent is amazing. Yeah, among the younger generation of our Jian family, the most outstanding Jian Yunhua is nothing more than Ren Dan Jing Shaocheng. When everyone's gaze shifted to Shangguan Yuan, Yin Xiangxi's beautiful eyes dared to secretly look at the crown prince, their eyes full of complexity, but the crown prince didn't say a word and didn't know what he was writing with his pen. Don't look, they're all junk goods, nothing on the list I gave you. Jian Nian felt a little cold-hearted, took a deep breath, walked towards Yin Xiangxi, and asked, "Little beggar, do you like Shangguan Yuan?" Chapter 9. Seeking Bribery. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Yin Xiangxi did not feel alarmed by the gaze of those strong men, but quietly looked at the crown prince, wanting to see something from his eyes. Brother Yuan is kind and naturally likes it, but I was bought by the young master, as long as the young master agrees. Finally, Yin Xiangxi compromised, his eyes slightly dimmed. She knew that if she didn't say that, people from the official family would lose face, while things thrown away by the Jian family would be even more precious. You never leave Brother Yuan, but when you call me the crown prince, your tone is cold. Jian Nian joked and looked at Shangguan Yuan, who always kept a smile, saying, "Hey, don't bully the little beggar, otherwise I'll beat you up." There's no such thing as. Yin Xiangxi felt a little angry upon hearing this. Humph, Siling's cultivation still wants to beat Brother Yuan, shameless. Shang Guanling grumbled discontentedly. It's enough to beat you up, Jian Yan said casually. Linger, if you keep talking, I won't bring you next time, Shang Guanlan shouted. Yin Xiangxi glanced at Shang Guanling and did not speak, but her pretty face had a chilling expression that was quite noticeable. Well, since it's a dowry, why don't you prepare these things for me? Jian Yan walked up to Shang Guanyuan and handed the note to him. With just a glance, Shang Guanyuan's facial muscles twitched slightly, devoid of his usual gentleness. Shang Guanlan extended his palm, his ice-blue spiritual power wrapped around the piece of paper. The other powerful members of the Shangguan family couldn't help but see what had frightened Shangguan Yuan, who usually had a calm temperament, into this state. Qingling Chongshua fruit, Nirvana diamond flower, 7-colored pure spirit saliva, nail-sized space stone, and 100 drops of mature monster's essence blood. There are over 20 types of natural resources and treasures, and every time a name is pronounced, the heart rate of those who go to the official family accelerates by a few points. Shang Guanlan frowned, wondering what the prince was up to. There are some things on this list that other families in Lingcheng may not have heard of. There is a spirit stone called Purple Spirit Crystal, which is really rare. I heard that Leone Chamber of Commerce has inventory, and this item even makes me tempted. The rest. Although Shang Guanlan's heart was dripping with blood, he still smiled bitterly and said, I can be satisfied with everything. Wow. The people of the Jian family thought that the crown prince deliberately made things difficult for the people of the high-ranking official family, waiting for the roar of the high-ranking official family to break the silence, but when they heard Shang Guanlan agree, their faces immediately became complicated. The purpose of the Shangguan family marrying a maid from the Jian family is only to support the Jian family in the event of conflicts between the Jian family and the Wan Beast sect in the future. Does the other party have reason to support the Jian family? But it seems that the crown prince cannot see the underlying intention behind this matter. Instead, the lion opened his mouth and took the initiative to ask for a dowry. This Shangguan family is really a scapegoat. I didn't mean to sell you, but I really need these things. I didn't expect it to happen. Jian Yan blinked and also noticed Xiangxi's eyes full of resentment. Yin Xiangxi then lowered her head, fiddled with the hem of her skirt, and ultimately only took Shangguan Yuan's hand and left. But I still have to ask, the crown prince really plans to cultivate. It's not that I'm hitting you, there's really no need, then. Cough. Jian Hong coughed a few times and stared at his upper abdomen. I already know, uncle. Jian Yan didn't sigh, her face was calm, and her eyes were resolute. He kept it a secret for so long, only to find out after his sister left Lingcheng, which really made him feel frustrated. I will break through to the spiritual pill realm and also leave Lingcheng, but I don't know which faction those people come from. Jian Yan looked at the elders of the Jian family. The people of the Jian family fell silent. Jian Yunhua, Jian Feng, Jian Yinshi. The younger generation also clenched their fists. Of course, they had heard of some, but they didn't know more than the crown prince. The beast sect. Jian Hong felt somewhat powerless when he said this sentence. I understand, I will work hard. He didn't ask what kind of power this was, and in terms of current strength, it would only be ridiculed by those from the upper officials. In 3 days' time, I will bring the dowry. Of course, except for the purple spirit crystal, the Shangguan family and the Jian family will become relatives in the future, sharing weal and woe. Shangguan stood up, and all members of the Shangguan family also stood up, bidding farewell to some friends of the Jian family. The younger generation doesn't understand the rules very well. To make everyone laugh, since we are in-laws, it should be me or my sister who got married with the legitimate relatives of the official family. Although Xiangxi is also considered by us as the Jian family, she doesn't have the bloodline of the Jian family. What do you want to say? Shang Guanlan calmly glanced at the boy. I mean we shouldn't get married together. Let's get married to her. Double happiness is on our doorstep. How about that? Jian Nian looked at a girl from the upper official family with a pig-like expression on her face, raised her voice, and said, Shangguan Ling, if I had Chen Ling cultivation at the age of 5, it would still be the result of a year of cultivation. Don't say I won't give you a chance to pursue it, Jian Nian said stinkily. People from the Shangguan family are dumbfounded, and Shangguan Ling is petrified. She really wants to rush up and tear up this person's mouth. She has always looked down on those useless and self-righteous people, and Jian Nian is definitely one of them. Let's go. By the way, although the Lioni Chamber of Commerce has the purple spirit crystal, there are too many people who care about it. At least it is also a 5th-level heavenly treasure. You need to act quickly. Shangguan Lan was too lazy to listen to this stinky kid's nonsense. After saying these words, the whole group left without looking back. If it weren't for the Jian family, I would definitely want you to look good. Shangguan Ling's chest was bulging and her face was disheveled. The opportunity is rare. Jian Nian let out a sigh. Jian Yunhua, the eldest brother of the Jian family, only broke through Chen Ling when he was 13 years old. Although he had been abandoned for many years, he had broken through a small realm in 10 years, but he was not what he used to be. Don't be too proud, but compared to these people, at least you have something more precious than talent. Remember, maintain your state of no desire or desire. There is a reason why the heart chapter won't give you anything. Besides, we can also set off to go to that Lioni Chamber of Commerce. Jian Nian nodded, ignoring the lingering gaze of the elders behind him. He was still very interested in condensing the spirit mansion. This is the key to imbuing him with 2 cultivation techniques. In the noisy street market, a man and a woman remained silent for a long time. After leaving the Jian family, Yin Xiangxi deliberately kept some distance from Shangguan Yuan, like a timeless mysterious ice that was difficult to get close to. She just didn't want the crown prince to see that she didn't like Shangguan Yuan. She just had some favoritism towards him. After all, he was one of the few people who treated her well, and his status was still so prestigious. Actually, do you like the crown prince? Shangguan Yuan suddenly said. He also disdains to say bad things about Jian Nian. It's unnecessary. Although he doesn't know what he wants to do, those heavenly and earthly treasures are not very helpful for his own cultivation progress, and they are not something that a person with his strength can refine at all. Perhaps they are prepared for his Uncle Jian. Speaking of which, I haven't seen Uncle Jian today. Although I know this marquis has become accustomed to his carefree demeanor, I thought I could see him on this occasion. You don't really like me, do you? I saw a longing in your eyes. I can't say it, but I don't feel like it's the kind between men and women. Yin Xiangxi gritted her silver teeth and didn't deliberately modify her first intuition. You are very beautiful and even better at acting. When you were in the Spirit Academy, you looked like a completely different person from when you were in the Jian family. But you are so smart, why would you ask such silly questions? Shangguan Yuan's eyes were filled with a hint of depth. That's seeing the gaze of the prey, and the prey is actively hooked. As long as the Jian family is approached by the beast sect, will the Shangguan family really do it with all their might? Yin Xiangxi frowned slightly. Shangguan Yuan wanted to reach out and smooth it out, but the former took a step back. He didn't like it in his heart, but he still smiled and replied, "Of course, it's been several years. You should know my intentions." Although Shangguan Yuan may not be considered a first-class cultivation genius in the entire ancient country, he thinks he is still excellent. What kind of woman would waste so much time on you if he couldn't find her? Because I really care about you, Shangguan Yuan spread out his hands. Yin Xiangxi didn't dare to agree. She had an intuition that after Shangguan Yuan successfully proposed a marriage, there was always a feeling of scheme succeeding in his words. 3 months later, you will be my person. It's best to forget Jian Nian. At least in that case, he would consider saving her life. The Lioni Chamber of Commerce has produced many good things in the past, such as awakening techniques, spiritual martial arts, animal martial arts, and even the ability to purchase high-end color crystals of comparable quality to the Color Palace. Master, you don't want me to bring uncle and the others. What should I buy purple spirit crystal for? Jian Yan cried mournfully. Entering the Chamber of Commerce, everyone's spiritual power fluctuates during the transformation stage of the 12 spirit chens. It is normal for him to have such strength without anyone to receive him. The purple spirit crystal can elevate the spiritual power within the spiritual body to a higher level. Whether it is the first stage of the sealing god technique or my cultivation method that has not yet been named, it has no effect on increasing your spiritual power. The official's ability to prepare things outside of the purple spirit crystal surprised even me. If he really gave you the purple spirit crystal, I suspect they are not pure in their intentions, said the anonymous person. Although various medicinal herbs, spirit stones, and items that enhance cultivation are collectively referred to as heavenly materials and earthly treasures, with no grade classification, in terms of rarity and inherent value, purple spirit crystals are considered good. Because this item contains a hint of purple energy, even if it is insignificant, it is still a coveted treasure. Even without this incident, I still feel that their motives are impure. I just don't practice, but it doesn't mean I'm foolish. Perhaps in the eyes of my master, the items on the list are nothing except for the purple spirit crystal, but that can still make them bleed. Although Xiangxi is beautiful, there's no need to spit blood so much, right? Jian Yan pouted. You drip your essence and blood into the soul ring, so that I can better perceive the external situation. Next time I see that little girl, see what these people are up to, said Anonymous. Those who thanked their master. Just as Jian Yan was talking to her master, the three of them walked towards him with an unpleasant expression on their faces. Oh, isn't this the second-generation ancestor of Lingcheng? What are you doing here? It seems like your thug isn't with you. Chapter 10. Luo Yangqiutong. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. The long-standing feud between the Jian family and the Wu and Li families has attracted many spectators. Li Yunfei clenched his fist and unleashed his spiritual power, which was truly a rare opportunity. Li Yunfei, your elixir field was kicked out by my sister once, and now your cultivation. Jian Yan was a bit surprised. He was too familiar with this spiritual power fluctuation, which was also his spiritual strength. Humph, we can recover this account today. Jian Yan was amazed. 2 years ago, Li Yunfei had Su Ling's strength, but after his cultivation was abolished, he was able to improve to Si Ling's strength 2 years later. It seems that he has eaten a lot of good food. But the opponent's spiritual power is too weak. It seems like he has been taking too much medication. He uses his only spiritual skill, wind step, like teasing a monkey, and every time the opponent is about to touch him, he dodges from an incredible angle. Fengbu, he studied for 10 years. Don't hide if you have the ability. Li Yunfei was furious. Good Jian Yan suddenly stopped and stumbled over the opponent, but when Li Yunfei landed, he quickly stabilized his body and his reaction speed was not bad. Beast martial arts skills, fierce mountain tigers. Li Yunfei's eyes were bloodshot, and the spiritual power in his right palm condensed into a fierce tiger. With the roar of the tiger's spiritual power, the phantom hit Jian Yan fiercely. That's enough. Just as Li Yunfei was showing off his skills, a beautiful and enchanting figure appeared among a group of people. The woman's skin is snow-white, with a pair of slender and round jade legs that make people drool. Her eyes are as blue as lake water, with a seductive and soul-stirring expression in her eyes. However, her pretty face carries a hint of anger. If Sheng Guanling stood next to this woman, her proud figure would be crushed and unable to lift her head. Let's just play around and use our martial arts skills. For the sake of the face of the Li family leader, I'll spare you this time. The woman spoke with a hint of dignity. Jian Yan was also surprised. He had come to the Chamber of Commerce several times and had never seen this woman before. "Miss Luo Yangqiutong, it's my friend who is being impulsive. I hope you can calm down," said the person who came with Li Yunfei. Jian Yan glanced at this person, not very familiar, and had seen him several times in a low-level spiritual courtyard. He doesn't often go to low-level spiritual academies to practice because they can't give him anything. If he really wants to practice, the elders of the Jian family will give him everything. The only reason he occasionally goes is to boost the prestige of the girl Xiangxi, so as not to be bullied by others and have no power or influence. "Are you from the Jian family?" Luo Yangqiutong looked at the young man who was slightly shorter than her and was curious. Not to mention in Lingcheng, there may not be anyone in the entire Yunzhou who can afford the purple spirit crystal. This item has a price but no market, and can only be exchanged for something. However, those forces in Kyoto cannot provide what the Lioni Chamber of Commerce wants. I heard from a friend of hers at the Advanced Spirit Academy that maybe she could come to Lingcheng to try her luck, and maybe the Jian family has what she wants. Li Yunfei and the others looked at Jian Yan, who nodded, but the few of them didn't know how this kid was qualified to know people from the Advanced Spirit Academy. The Advanced Spiritual Academy, located in Kyoto, is difficult for people in Lingcheng to access. "Are you all here for purple spirit crystal?" Luo Yangqiutong asked with a cold face. Several people nodded in unison. Although many people had an idea for this item, how many people in Lingcheng, apart from the 5 major families, could afford it? "Come with me." The group, led by Luo Yangqiutong, entered different private rooms, seemingly afraid that they might argue again. "Just now, I saw the body techniques and martial arts you used. You can capture the wind generated by the opponent during battle and avoid it. In fact, this is already very good. It's just that your strength is too low, but based on your proficiency level, I think even the creator of this spiritual martial arts skill may not have a higher level of mastery than you," said the anonymous. "Master, is there still room for growth in this wind step? I have always had a question, that is, there is no level division for this spiritual martial arts skill. Does it mean that the stronger the spiritual beings, the more powerful their spiritual martial arts skills become?" The elders of the Jian family said so, but if that were the case, even if he had learned the wind step deeply, he would not have reached the height he wanted. After all, this wind step was created by the second uncle, and he only had cultivation in the star realm. After the 12 spirit chens and the spirit power transformation pill, one officially steps into the spirit pill realm. The spirit pill realm consists of 3 small realms: human pill, earth pill, and heavenly pill. On that day, if the pill realm is stronger, countless spirit power pills will be opened up in the body, just like the stars in the night sky, which is why it is called the star realm. It is shameful to say that before his father appeared, the strength of the entire Jian family was not even as strong as that of the Li and Wu families in Lingcheng. After his father became the only feudal lord of the ancient country with an external surname, it was said that he could obtain 200,000 lingbai every year. It should be noted that the Li family, who is the most skilled at gold mining, only earns 50,000 to 60,000 lingbai from reselling medicinal herbs every year. Over the years, relying on these spiritual treasures and the colored crystals refined by the colorful crystal hall, they were barely able to sustain the expenses of the Jian family. Xiao Yu and his father had lived in the Jian family since childhood and did not leave, while the rest of the guards and offerings left the Jian family. This can be considered a misconception among people, even your master cannot avoid it. He used to think that for a weak spiritual person, in order to improve their combat power, they can only choose some powerful spiritual or animal martial arts. In their view, these spiritual martial arts are naturally the stronger the person, the stronger the spiritual martial arts they create. So, for a strong person, how can they improve their combat power? Is it looking for spiritual martial arts created by a stronger person? No, in the future, you will find that the spiritual martial arts created by truly strong people are indeed profound and unpredictable, and almost everyone else except for those who can cultivate themselves, can improve their own combat power. Unable to learn, in the end, the so-called strong will find that they have learned more and more martial arts skills along the way, and almost no longer use them. If they fight against the same strong, what do they have to rely on, creating martial arts skills? Jian Yan said. Not to mention the southern regions, let's just talk about Lingcheng. At least half of the people are using self-created martial arts, which is a very common thing. By the way, to be precise, disregarding martial arts skills and relying solely on spiritual power, even if you have many moves and flashy tricks, it cannot withstand the power of my fist. Kid, one person cannot cultivate two types of martial arts and possesses two types of spiritual power. Didn't you really see anything? The nameless sighed, feeling tired. Master, did you mean that the unnamed cultivation technique you created is the strongest martial arts skill, and the essence of your martial arts skill is the strength of spiritual power? Jian Yan's eyes lit up. The cultivation technique is the only way to steadily increase the cultivation speed. The higher the level, the not only can it accelerate the cultivation speed, but it can also give some special strength to spiritual power. The sealing god technique is a domineering technique that enhances strength. Although it does not bring any increase in spiritual power, this obvious disadvantage can be completely ignored under the dominance of the sealing god technique. How can spiritual power increase be defeated by cultivation? That master's unnamed cultivation technique shattered and reunited spiritual power, repeatedly strengthening it. Isn't that the strongest martial arts skill? Humph, I'm not too stupid. When you open up the Lingfu, you can barely glimpse the power of my method. Of course, it's very dangerous. Jian Yan also had expectations upon hearing this, purple spirit crystal, he must get it. Miss Luo Yangqiutong, if you exchange things for goods, I am willing to pay 1,000,000 spiritual treasures, and the entire Li family will serve you in the future. Li Yunfei said with a difficult tone. Purple spirit crystal, he had never heard of this object before, and only learned about its magic through the introduction of the Li family's two-color master. For spiritual practitioners with the cultivation of the 12 spirit chens, it can consolidate their foundation. Over the years, he has tried every method to break through to his original strength. Although it is useful, it has left many roots of illness. These spiritual treasures have been the income of the Li family for 7 or 8 years, plus the proceeds from selling some of their assets and the crystal formula of Zhu Lingjing. Yu reading www.uukangshu.net is already the highest price he can offer. I just heard from my father that the purple spirit crystal that appeared at the ancient Kyoto auction last time was sold for over 3 million spiritual gemstones. Not enough. Luo Yangqiutong shook his head in disappointment. What about the inner alchemy of this void beast? Asked the young man. Li Yunfei looked at the two brothers Wu Hao and Wu Sun, somewhat surprised, not knowing why they had such a good thing. If it's a mature void beast inner pill, it can be considered a product of the same level, but unfortunately, this void beast is still in its infancy. Luo Yangqiutong shook his head and refused to trade. A mature void beast, with strength comparable to that of a spirit lord powerhouse, would be a terrifying monster that both the ancient royal family and powerful sects feared. Does Miss Luo Yangqiutong have something she likes? I can think of a way. However, Li Yunfei still didn't want to leave empty-handed. Have you ever heard of a colored crystal called explosive crystal? Luo Yangqiutong hesitated for a moment before asking. Li Yunfei, Wu Hao, and Wu Sun pondered for a while, but ultimately shook their heads. Can you provide a specific description? Asked Wu Senior. A type of colored crystal that can unleash extremely strong power by injecting spiritual power, equivalent to self-explosion, with unknown grade level. It is rumored that there are no more than 10 colored masters who know the method of refining such colored crystals in the world. They come from an organization, but later this organization disbanded. Luo Yangqiutong explained. Upon hearing this, the three of them were even more embarrassed. They were all so powerful that no more than 10 people in the world could refine it. If that's the case, let alone Lingcheng. Even in ancient times, there may not be one. Alright, there are still many good things in the Chamber of Commerce. If you're interested, you can take a look. The three of them looked at each other. It seemed like they were really going to get nothing today.